Hi, everybody. My name is Alexandra, and I am the chair for our Women of MU Healthcare Employee Resource Group here at MU Healthcare. And I want to thank you so much for attending our very first Women Leadership Panel focused on women in healthcare. So if you're not familiar with our employee resource groups here at MU Healthcare, we currently have 4 employee resource groups, and Women of MU Healthcare is one of them. And our goal is to really focus on advancing MU Healthcare's mission through cultivating an environment of inclusion in which women can flourish and develop and achieve all of their personal and professional goals. So we've put on a variety of different opportunities for professional development, networking, community service, and also employee engagement. And this is one of our opportunities that we have opened up to really everybody that's associated or affiliated with MU Healthcare and even in the community as well. For this event, you're going to hear from 4 wonderful, very inspiring women affiliated with our health system, and they're going to be able to provide you with a lot of insight onto how they got to where they're at today, lessons they've learned along the ways, and ways that you might find beneficial as well as you are exploring your career in healthcare. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce the panelists, and then we'll jump right into questions. After we go through our formalized panel, we will then open up the questions to the audience. So please don't hesitate throughout the time to ask any questions you might have directed to specific panelists or all of the panelists in general. And then around 6 o'clock, we will go on ahead and start that Q&A feedback as well. If you run into any issues or technical problems along the way, you're welcome to send me a chat as well, as I'll be monitoring that. So our first panelist is going to be Misty Jones. Misty is the Service Line Director for Emergency Services and has been with MU Healthcare for almost 12 years. She's had a lot of progressive leadership opportunities during those 12 years, and her leadership practice has been developed around transformational leadership theory. She's passionate about removing barriers for practice and encourages intellectual curiosity throughout the work environment. Our second panelist is going to be Dr. Laura Henderson Kelly. Dr. Laura Henderson Kelly is the Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion and an Assistant Professor for Internal Medicine and Pediatrics at the University of Missouri School of Medicine. She obtained her medical degree from Wayne State University School of Medicine in Detroit, Michigan, and did residency training in internal medicine and pediatrics at Detroit Medical Center. She later received her master's in public health degree at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health in 2009. Dr. Henderson came to the University of Missouri School of Medicine in 2014 with extensive experiences in healthcare. In addition to her clinical practice, she also is involved in teaching residents, and she has an interest and commitment to helping create a physician workforce that is diverse and capable of addressing the needs of all patients. She's actively creating a comprehensive strategic plan for the School of Medicine to help to move the institution forward in pursuit of an inclusive excellence. Lisa Saffron, she is our third panelist, and she is currently an associate teaching professor with the Department of Public Health and co-chair for the Health Humanities Consortium. Formerly, she was the director of the MU Healthcare Masters of Public Health program. Saffron studied public health at UNC Gillings School of Public Health and fiction writing at Iowa's Writing Workshop. Her research and teachings focus on public health humanities and storytelling in public health. And then our fourth panelist is going to be Teresa Brooks. And Teresa Brooks is the Senior Director of Revenue Cycle and Care Management. She actually just celebrated her first year anniversary at MU Healthcare, so congratulations on that. And prior to coming to MU Healthcare, Teresa spent 22 years in various leadership roles within the revenue cycle at Detroit Medical Center in Michigan. Teresa progresses a transformational leadership style, one that motivates and inspires creativity and encourages followers to explore new ways of doing things. As a transformational leader, Teresa inspires staff through effective communication, collaboration, and effective objective and goal alignment. Teresa also describes herself as a situational leader, as she has had to adapt to different circumstances and a variety of workplace challenges in the ever-changing climate of financial healthcare management. So thank you so much to our 4 panelists for being a part of this event. And we will kind of jump right in to get started with some of our questions that we have. The first question I'm going to ask all of you is for every single panelist to answer and chime in at. But we recognize that each of you has a demanding career and a variety of other commitments. So can you tell us one reason why you have pursued other leadership roles and responsibilities?
Oh, should I start? Oh, okay. I think for me, it was just kind of interest. I like a challenge, and I feel like if I'm going to have a career that's going to somewhat take me away from my family, I want to be challenged to push further and to really do something that that may make a difference. Also to kind of be a role model, not just a lot specifically for my own daughter, but you know, young girls, young women need to see women in positions of leadership. And so they need to see us in these roles to know that, that this is attainable as well. So that would be my thought.
I definitely, the idea of being a role model resonates. It feels like there are opportunities in all of our lives for courage or for, taking a step back. And throughout my career as a younger woman, I noticed that it could be easier to be the person on the side with the ideas, kind of chiming in and letting somebody else lead and take the risks. And so, I think at some point it felt like an obligation to take those risks myself. And also, it is more interesting and exciting, and you have the potential to make things happen. And, if you're going to grow, I think that's a direction to grow into.
I think for myself, I think it was just kind of aligning my passion with just the way that I'm inherently wired. One of the reasons that I've been so successful in healthcare is because I like to fix things. So when I was at the bedside, I was fixing things for the patient or fixing the patient. And then it got bigger as I became a supervisor. It was fixing things for the unit. And then as a manager, I started fixing things for the department. And then now at the service line level and the system level. And really what it is, I think that's what's been passionate and kind of led me down this leadership role, is really kind of aligning what I like to do, which is really just making things better for everybody that I touch in some way, but really kind of following that passion and fixing things. So that's inherently what I like to do in every aspect of my life. And it's just aligned very nicely in my career that I've been able to do that progressively as well.
Well, for me, I think the one thing that happened with me is that actually someone else kind of saw some things in me that they pulled out. And so although it was very comfortable, I was comfortable where I was doing what I was doing at the time. I've always been blessed to be surrounded by people that believe in really developing others. And so I had a couple really great mentors that saw something in me that wanted to pull it out of me. And I can remember initially feeling as though, okay, I really don't want to do this. But I think by nature, I think I'm a leader by nature. And I think that I truly believe that, sometimes it takes someone else seeing something in you and being able to develop that. And so that's kind of what put me on my path. And as a result, I like to do that in others as well.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. It sounds like I love how each of your answers connected to so much more than just yourselves. It involved other people. It involved the work of teams as well. So kind of going into a little bit more detail, and Misty, you can go on ahead and start us off. But what is one of the most satisfying leadership roles you've had? And briefly tell us why it made it so satisfying for you.
Boy, that's a tough one, because I think there's satisfaction at every level. Because I mean, at the end of the day, I'm passionate about that transformational leadership and being able to grow and develop, allowing nurses and clinicians to practice their practices they see it at the bedside. So removing those barriers. So I just get to expand and feel satisfaction at every level. So, whether it was a house manager putting out the fires at night, but then in the department, helping remove the barriers for those practice for my nurses now as a service line, and then the opportunities I have now to partner with School of Medicine, and really see how we can really start to work together collaboratively with other disciplines. I think that's the biggest satisfying thing, is just, as you said, pulling everybody together as a team, working on improving the system that benefits everybody. I think that's what is exciting for me, is just being able to see that downstream impact. And, as the project or whatever it is gets larger in span, I think it takes a little bit longer to see that impact, but I think it's just as satisfying no matter whether it's a very small, just a departmental, we fixed this one issue for the nurses on night shift, or we fixed this one thing for the entire service line. So.
Thank you. Do any of the other panelists have any additional comments they'd like to add?
Well, I'll say that I recently stepped down as the director of the MPH program at the University of Missouri, and I'm now teaching in that program. And it was a tremendous leadership opportunity. And one of the things that made it so satisfying was that it was an opportunity to build something. We didn't have an MPH program, and then I was the associate director under Dean Haglund of Health Professions. And when he became dean, I became the director, and we were still in an incredible phase of growth, new students, new programs, new committees, new certificates, new everything. And it took a real team. Everybody really had to be operating at a very high level of creativity and flexibility and confidence and collaborative efforts. And the result, though, is hundreds of graduates working in public health throughout the state of Missouri and the country and internationally. And so that, just to have such a combination of wonderful administrative colleagues, but also just this outcome, which is so tangible, is really, really a satisfying experience.
Yeah, and that really resonates with me too. It's seeing your hard work and your input kind of come to fruition. In my position, I helped find was co-founder and now director of the Pathways to Success program, which kind of helps first-gen underrepresented minority undergrads, helps them really prepare a competitive candidacy for medical school. And I was so passionate about it because in my pursuit of medicine, I never had those opportunities. I never really had somebody to guide me along the way. I was the first one in my family, so nobody helped me really navigate that process. And I know what that void feels like. So to kind of be able to fill that void for them has been just extremely rewarding. And to see, working with students can be a little taxing, especially the undergrads, but I love them to death. And they're really grateful for what they've done. And they're such hardworking students, and then to see them succeed. And like you said, to see them get into medical school and to see them, be able to actualize their dreams because we filled that void and helped direct them along the way. I think it's probably one of the most satisfying things I've done in my career so far.
Well, I can tell you that I think one of the most satisfying positions I had was actually my last position at the Detroit Medical Centers. It was the vice president of revenue cycle, and it was a position that was created, and I was the first person that was in that position. And the most satisfying part about it was not about me, but about those that I led. And when I left, I had at least 3 individuals, other directors that had been developed. And one of them actually took was able to step in after I left. And that was really satisfying for me because I felt as though I was instrumental in helping to create the role, and then also instrumental in helping to develop the next person who is now in that role. So very satisfying as a leader.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I will go on ahead and pose this question to Dr. Henderson Kelly and Misty Jones. I'm curious to know, what do you look for in leadership roles or opportunities? And then how do you assess which ones are right for you?
So I think one of the things I really initially look for if a leadership role comes across my path is just really, it kind of sounds funny, but I look for the ability for advancement. So I make sure it's not kind of like, there's a ceiling to it. I want to know that, okay, this is a great next step, but then what may come after that? What could it lead to? Because obviously you want to continue to grow. And so I do want to make sure that that's in place. I look for supportive leadership, structure. Whoever's going to be right above me or supervising me, you want to come into a supportive structure in terms of whatever leadership role that's going to be. I like well-defined goals. What are the goals of that position? But I also like flexibility within that so that I can kind of make it my own as well. I kind of look for the path less taken, maybe a role in its infancy, because that gives me the ability to mold and shape it. That's kind of helpful for me. Like I said, I like a lot of flexibility, even though I want to know what the goals are. So yeah. And the second part, I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
How do you assess what options are right for you? And out of all the leadership positions out there, how do you know which one is the best fit for you and your
Oh,
skills?
okay. Okay. So I think, you know, any of the positions that kind of have that kind of construct with it would be something that I would search for.
So I think for me, I have done a lot of work, you know, not only aligning what I think my practice needs to look like and nurturing my practice in leadership, but recognizing what I'm passionate about. And I have to have alignment between the system, mission, and vision and goals and what I'm passionate about. Because if I'm a pretty high energy person and I like to grow and think out of the box and do a lot of things. And I would not be successful in a role that was very restrictive and very cookie cutter and all of those things. So I am very conscientious about what makes me successful and happy. And I need a little bit of that pasture to kind of run around in and, you know, with the framework. But the reality is, you know, like Dr. Henderson Kelly says, I can make it my own. And so I need that ability to be flexible in my role and try new things and potentially take us in different directions. Because if I start to, at times in my career when I felt disconnected from the mission, or I didn't feel like my goals and my personal strengths were being utilized to the best, I become very disengaged. And I am a sad puppy when my energy level is at 75 and I'm not at 120. So it's very important to me to make sure that I am feeling that I feel fulfilled in that role, and that I feel I'm contributing to the greater good.
Awesome, thank you. I hope everybody's finding this information as valuable as I am. Don't forget to feel free to use the question and answer box to ask any questions you have so we can touch on them throughout the latter end of the panel as well. So I'll pose this question to Teresa and Lisa. Do you ever find yourself in leadership positions where the opportunities and the experience was a lot different than you had anticipated? And what did you learn from those situations?
Definitely. And I think it was one of my very first leadership roles where I was actually, I was promoted from within to an interim position. And I thought that, you know, everybody would be excited, you know, so they already knew me, you know, we worked well together as peers. And so I was like, you know, even though this is an interim role, this is going to be great. Not so. So it was nothing like I thought it was. I think that, you know, I think being promoted amongst your peers brought on some things that I just hadn't anticipated. And I think what it did was it really did help me to develop the skills that were within, you know, like inside of me, the qualities that I believed made for a good leader. And so things like, you know, integrity, accountability. I think that helped me be able to maybe get the support of those peers to understand that, you know, I was capable and I could be successful. But I really had to dig deep and bring that out because I felt like I was on an island for the first period of that. And so when when the director came back, I was like, glad that's over. And the one thing that was interesting is when she came back, she had a conversation with me and said, it is time for you to move on to another role. And I said, oh my God, did I fail? What happened? And she said, no, you succeeded. And so she shared with me how I would not be happy going back after I had the opportunity to experience a different level of leadership, as well as being able to nurture some of those qualities that were within me.
So about 2 years ago, I'm a member of the Health Humanities Consortium, which is people who do health humanities are concern themselves with the way that our human qualities can be recognized in healthcare and public health, and also the way that the humanities, history, literature, art can enhance our understanding of ourselves and each other and what we're doing. And this is my passion. A lot of my teaching and research is in this area. And I have been presenting and attending at the conferences of this really new consortium and was part of the group that helped form it into a consortium. And 2 years ago, the founders asked me and another person if we would be the next co-chairs of this entity. And I don't know what my expectations were, because it was so very new and the roles were pretty undefined. And it's the members are all over the country and universities that are very different from MU, small liberal arts colleges, as well as big research institutions. But also, our membership wasn't even really defined. So I don't know if I knew what to expect. And the challenges that have gone along with that level of sort of newness they've really drawn on my communication skills, self-regulation, being a co-chair during the pandemic when we're trying to organize a meeting, and then working with the host institution, which was Vanderbilt University, to call off the meeting. I think, I don't regret it, because it's been so very interesting, and also it is my passion, but it's very hard to, I don't necessarily recommend, unless it is your passion, stepping into something that is that unformed and undefined. That can be really hard to get your arms around and have everybody leave feeling recognized and like they've, been acknowledged.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. I definitely feel like I was able to relate to a lot of the things y'all were saying, so I'm sure a lot of our attendees were able to relate as well. So one of the most common questions that I had when I was, especially an undergrad and even now, and one of the most common questions that I receive as well, and that I know I'm always wanting to ask leaders that I look up to as role models, is what do you need? People often are really curious about the skills and what they can do to better themselves as leaders. So I'd love to hear from all of you. Dr. Henderson-Kelly, if you'd like to start, that'd be awesome. But what skills do you find you use most often in your leadership role that it'd be valuable for others to have as well?
I think one main one is communication, communication with your colleagues, your other leaders, basically with all the stakeholders in your position, those who work with you, those who work that you are helping supervise, organization, obviously, like juggling multiple things at multiple times. But I think a big one is really a willingness to admit really that you don't know everything and that's okay. But there are others around you who do, that can help. And so kind of building that team around you with those skills that you do lack, because you will lack skills. But humility also to kind of be able to follow, even when you're in a leadership role, sometimes it's best for you to follow for maybe, a project or something like that, and being okay with that. So humility. I would say openness maybe to new ideas, resiliency, because things will go wrong. But just being able to kind of understand that, look at it and learn from it and move on. But because unexpected things will happen. I think those were probably the main traits I could think of.
I would support all of those for sure. I'm just going to jump in real quick, because I think Dr. Henderson-Kelly had a great point there with the communication. That is got to be the #1 priority, no matter whether you're in leadership or beginning in leadership or any of those stuff. The reality of it is the education will always be there, and you can develop and take that path as you go. But if there's just some basic foundational blocks that you can begin early on in your career, I think taking the time to learn about and invest in developing your emotional intelligence is huge, because it's not only the communication and learning how to speak and articulate, but learning how to understand what other people are trying to say to you, even especially if they struggle with communication, because you've got to have that sense of being able to, something's not quite right here, and how do I get to the root of it? Because especially in that collaborative team environment, which I'm going to shout out to women. I think we are so much better at that, collaborating as a team and working together than the guys are, because they're always like, I want to be first and I got to be in the chair. And I think we are so much better at collaborating, but that's a huge piece of it. So I think we're definitely intuitive and have that leg up with them and that collaborating piece. And I think as you see, if you've done any research about kind of where industries are going and leadership theory and thought process, everything is starting to shift more to that collaborative, recognizing that it's not that one empowered person that's leading the charge, that it is the group think now that is this successful model. So I think that women are perfectly primed for that. It's just making sure that you've got those base skills to go for that and start developing that early and being very mindful about how you practice that.
I would say the emotional intelligence thing is really, really, really important. And it is a skill, it is a skill that you can develop. And that's important to remember, that it's not just a personality trait. Sort of, you can learn self-regulation and improve on those. And it can be make a huge impact. And I would add too, with communication, there are little pieces of communication, obviously being able to articulate and hear what other people are saying. And with that curiosity, developing and nurturing curiosity, what's at the root of what's happening here? What is motivating this other person? What do I not know about this situation that could help me understand?
Yeah, and I was going to say communication as well. And I was kind of like what Misty said, with listening. I think that's important. I think, we have to listen and encourage input from those that we lead. And I think that goes a long way with developing that relationship where they feel comfortable sharing, but you have to foster that communication. Not only listening, but affirming what the individuals on your team are doing or what they're saying. So that affirmation helps them to, again, pull out what's in them, and they're more eager and confident about sharing that information. And I think those are key elements that help develop what I think is most important between a leader and those that they lead, and that is trust. So through those areas of communication, they all come together to really establish a sense of trust.
Awesome, thank you. I think you guys all touched on a lot of wonderful points, and everybody mentioned some very great key qualities to have. Now we know that those qualities can be utilized and displayed in so many different ways. I believe, Misty, you touched a little bit on how education comes, but there are so many different education and different styles of leadership, and people often wonder which one's the right one. And sometimes there is not a right answer, and you see a lot of wonderful leaders sharing different traits and different qualities and different leadership styles. So can you tell everybody a little bit more about your specific leadership style, and then what qualities you utilize to help engage others as well?
Ooh, great question, Allie. So I think, I don't know how many of you guys have young girls or kind of Disney fans or something, but if anybody's seen the live action Mulan lately, you got to watch it. And I think there's a very valuable point in that, because the movie really focuses on Mulan kind of stepping into her own power and, really kind of staying true to herself. And I think that's the biggest piece when you're developing in leadership, because I think we've all got a little bit, you have to find what's comfortable for you and you got to stick with it, because my leadership style might be a little bit different than Teresa's. And that's okay, because Teresa trying to be Misty is not going to work for Teresa, and Misty trying to be Teresa. I do not have the swag Sister Brooks has, and so that's definitely not going to work very well for me. I would not pull off those red boots, girl. I can tell you that. But the reality of it is you've just got to find, and stay true to yourself and be what's comfortable, because Kristen Soha has this great comment in the chat box. It's about how do we manage those situations when we're either threatening to other people because of our successes, or when we're working as a collaborative and it's the new power, how do we bring in our male counterparts or those solo leaders who maybe don't have that same level of collaboration that we do. And I think that's where it's very important that you kind of find that style that fits with you and just stay with it. and I'm going to run on here a little bit, but, coming from emergency services, I've had to, fortunately, I'm a pretty strong personality and I'm very direct, but I've also had to really manage that piece with the people that I work with. So if you think of my daily interactions are in very crisis-like situations with physicians and trauma surgeons and probably the strongest of the strong personalities. So I have to be able to hold my own against them in a collaborative discussion in a way that makes sure that my staff are advocated for, but in a way that's also not necessarily threatening or undermining to them, because, well, they'd probably behead me and just leave me, out on the helipad. I don't think that they would lose any sleep over that. But the reality of it is, that's where you have to learn your audience, and you have to either hold your ground and make sure that you do that, but also learn not to personalize attacks. So sometimes when people are feeling threatened or they've had and I'm not very good with it, but the whole scarf reaction where there's been a little bit of a status threat, sometimes they don't react in a way that's necessarily professional. It feels like it's a very personal attack. And I think it's really important for us in leadership, as you start to step up and climb that ladder, is that you don't personalize that. And that you say, at the end of the day, my intentions are the best for what I'm doing, and I'm trying to make sure that we are going in the right direction. And we're going to get there, and you just got to continually keep going back and working on that relationship. So that goes back to that emotional intelligence. Work on the relationship and continue to go back until you can get alignment. But I just try to keep that with myself. At the end of the day, they can't take my birthday. So we're just going to continue to get there when we can.
I wanted to say something in connection with this. Dr. Henderson Kelly had mentioned humility. And I think in particular for women, it can sometimes be hard for us to navigate the path between, say, humility and imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is, something I think that I would say everybody experiences. And imposter syndrome paradoxically works at cross purposes to humility. That feeling of being an imposter can make you, if you don't acknowledge it, sort of face it, accept it, and say, I'm going to move on and accept that I have limitations. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be able to solve all the problems, but I'm going to do my best and I have some skills. If you can't face that and be humble, imposter syndrome can make you brittle. And, it can make you afraid to listen and to be open because you're so afraid someone might see that you're an imposter. So, the sense of being humble, but also being recognizing who you are and that you are good enough can help with those, I think, self-regulation, emotional intelligence, and those relationships.
Teresa, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think I just want to ditto everything my sister Misty said. We call each other sisters, so we just got to put that out there. So, but I think again, being true to who you are, not apologizing for who you are, understanding that that's a part of the package, right? And then also accepting who other people are. Because let's face it, I try to not, it's really hard, but I try not to focus on me as much as I try to focus on the vision, the expectation, what I'm trying to accomplish as a leader. I can't do all of the work. So how can I empower those that I am leading to be able to do it? And that's where even like the vulnerability comes in, right? Being able to be okay with being vulnerable. I think one of the things that I have noticed just in revenue cycle is there's so many areas of the revenue cycle. So I'm often, I have to communicate with many different people, even if it's different directors within the revenue cycle that are leading different efforts. I have to understand how I can be a situational leader so that this situation requires me to react a certain way. And sometimes I have to be able to be vulnerable. And I think that, again, that really does help support and help the other individuals that you're leading. I also want to note that someone did ask the question, how does one get a supervisor to notice that you have those leadership qualities? And so I wanted to point out with that particular question is, there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable to say, hey, I have leadership qualities. And so what is it that I can do to help the department? I often taught even my kids when they were younger that you don't always have to get immediate pay for what you do. And so sometimes it's just the experience of it. And so sometimes just putting yourself out there saying, hey, I think I have leadership qualities. Somehow that's hard for us to do, right? So being vulnerable and being, taking on that, being that bold to be able to say, I have leadership qualities. So me as a leader, I love it when people reach out to me and say, hey, tell me about this, because I may not always see it, but my job is to bring it out. And especially if someone has brought that to my attention. So that particular person that asked that question, have that boldness. And if I'm your leader, tell me, because we have plenty for you to do. Well, we can definitely utilize those leadership skills. So.
Yeah, and I think to build on Teresa's point, especially because sometimes you may not see that at our level, it might be a little bit lower, but that's a perfect opportunity to use our grow conversations. If you see something, especially starting with it's a problem that needs to be fixed, or you have a great idea or an insight, or it's a PDSA, just say, hey, I love to see initiative and self-starters. So if there's somebody that's out there and I see that, and we start to mentor through that program or that process, or my leadership team sees that spark or that initiative in somebody, we're going to grow and develop it, because we're all about that. So I think it's, just taking that initiative, and the perfect opportunity to do that is our grow process, and just say, hey, I have this idea, or I would like to try this, and then just start taking the steps.
Awesome. Any other final comments to add for this topic before we kind of move on? Perfect. So we all know that, hindsight's 20/20, right? It's so easy to look back and say, oh, this is everything that I should have, could have, would have done. This is where I would have liked to have been better, or excel out stronger, or focus more attention on. So kind of looking back on your experiences, how would you have better prepared for some of your leadership roles? And I'll open the floor. Dr. Henderson-Kelly, if you'd like to start us off, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, hindsight is always 20/20, but I think the biggest thing for me, I would say kind of more confidence in myself to kind of take the opportunities that were given that I may have been hesitant to take at the time, thinking, oh, I'm not ready, or, oh, maybe it's too early, or no, I can't do this. So I don't really know how you have more confidence earlier, but, just taking that risk and knowing that, and I think Teresa said something about it earlier, when somebody sees something in you, kind of take that opportunity at that time, because it could be leading to something else. And so I would say more competence and being just more open and willing to participate in other opportunities that I, was maybe shying away from. That would be the biggest thing, I think, looking back.
I would say ask the questions that you have. I know that a lot of what I would do when I first started working was I would listen to the conversation, even at the meetings that I was invited to be a full participant in, and hear other people's questions. And I would have questions, and then afterward, I would say to a colleague, were they talking about the money that blah, 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 and I had an older colleague who mentored me, and she said, why didn't you ask that question at the meeting? Nobody knew the answer to that. You need to know. That was a good question. Ask the questions that you have.
I would say to not be afraid to fail. I mean, I think that's one of the things, probably through my entire career. I think I was so anxious and I have to be perfect, and I have to be accepted, and I have to do everything just right. And it's okay. Like, if I probably would have let myself fail, or let myself off the hook on some things a little bit sooner in my career, because quite honestly, I see where because I was so afraid of failure, I probably was on 110. And now that my children are grown and I'm a grandmother, I see that it really wasn't that serious after all. So I think that that's just, I wanted to be everything and I wanted to do everything and I wanted to be perfect and I wanted to be really good. And I wasn't. But to be able to allow myself that and still say, but I'm still okay. I still am a good mother. I'm still a good leader. I'm still, and I think I would have just given myself permission to not be so, I don't know. I just can remember this time and when I was just like, you know, and now I wish I had some of that time back and I would have spent a little more time with my kids and was there after school to pick them up and things like that. I mean, I'm just being very transparent now. But those are the things that I think I would have done differently because I think I would have found that balance a little bit sooner.
I think that perfectionism that you bring up, Teresa, is just so important because if it can really undermine. I mean, I understand it. We all feel it. We're all trying to achieve things, but it can really undermine that confidence because you're not going to achieve it. And so I remember one of the mantras that I would say to myself when I was the director of the MPH program and things would inevitably go wrong or there would be challenges or big thorny problems that we'd sit around the conference table talking about and everyone would kind of look and say, Lisa, okay, what do you think? And I would say to myself, when I agreed to be director of the program, I didn't promise that I could prevent all the problems. I didn't even promise that I could solve all the problems. I promised to be the person who would think really hard about the problems and try to bring everyone together to solve them. But I was never going to prevent them or solve them all. And that wasn't what I agreed to, and it's not what I can do.
I think we are all kind of hitting on that because I mean that's as women we feel like we have to be better and we have to perform better than our male peers and we have to outperform and do all of those things better. So I think early on I probably would have liked to have had more compassion for myself and just recognize that like now when I fail or something doesn't go the way that I want to, I don't necessarily give up on it, but I pause. And I think, okay, what could I have done differently? So I'm a lot more mindful about how I interact with failure now, where before, in my earlier years, I was such a perfectionist and an achiever. If I didn't get it, it's like, the voices in my head. I mean, I was brutal on myself. So I think I would have definitely learned a little bit more compassion and grace for myself, and then reframed how I looked at failure and seen it as an opportunity rather as the catastrophic event that was going to end my career and all of the things that went through my head.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing all of your feedback. I think it's really refreshing for me to see that I've definitely felt some of these things along the way, as I'm sure all of our participants have. So it's always nice to know that, hey, you're not the only one. So kind of diving into that, and you guys have already provided so much valuable advice for everybody who's listening and joining us in. And for those of you who maybe didn't start with us at the beginning, feel free to use the Q&A. We're going to be jumping into a lot of your questions here shortly. But before we do that, what advice do you have for the audience who is preparing to take on leadership roles, or even those who might be interested in getting into leadership roles, but they haven't quite gotten that foot in the door yet?
I think, and everybody has made really good points so far, but, something we could talk about too is mentorship. So if you really are looking to get into leadership roles, find those people that are actually doing them and be honest and tell them that you're interested so that you can kind of be involved in what that looks like, because that really is helpful to kind of know what you're getting into. But then, the difference between mentorship and sponsorship too, so that, knowing people or engaging with people who can advocate for you when you're not in the room. So when they see your abilities, and know that you have leadership potential, then when that opportunity may come up, you may not be around, but that person who knows you may be around. So I think, making and building connections is probably really important if is that the way that you think you're going to go. And it can be really helpful. Just to learn more about the positions and what you're doing. And then, like I said, to just, get somebody who's in your corner and who can advocate and help you.
I would also say too, you can gain experience in leadership in other places besides just the workplace. And so I would say take advantage of that. If it's at your church, if it's at the school, take advantage of those opportunities where you can truly develop some of your skills. I think a lot of times people may think, oh, I want to be in leadership. I want to be in leadership. Well, there's a whole lot, to much is given, much is required. And so things like accountability and all those things that we've talked about, find opportunities to be able to develop those skills to make sure that leadership is truly what you want, and to be able to come into a position or into a role with some skills that you've developed. And it's not always within the workplace. So I think that's what I would suggest.
And I would say start, while you're looking for leadership opportunities and you are looking for mentors and sponsors, try to cultivate and act like a leader where you are, which doesn't mean necessarily, having the administrative role of overseeing the budget. It means working collaboratively, looking at your team members and thinking, what does this person also need? How can I support them while I do what I'm doing? Acting with integrity and doing that, emotional intelligence, because you begin to get a reputation as somebody who can be trusted, who is collaborative. And then when the leadership opportunities arise, you're really somebody who people want to elevate.
I think that, all of those points are, definitely worth exploring too. I also like to have a 360 approach. So you start to build that network. One of my strengths is a relator. So I tend to keep those connections for life once I establish them. So I try to keep a 360 in my circle. That's really people who give me the real view. So if I've got somebody who reports to me or used to report to me, and every once in a while we touch base and say, have I gotten a little bit too big for my pants, or how's this coming across, or how is this going, and what can I do better? Definitely developing a relationship with your peer group, that some people who are experiencing the same things that you are at that time. I think that is instrumental in your own mental health, but survival in the workplace. And then to the mentorship point, find that one person at the next level up who you really have a good connection with, that can kind of give you some of those insights. So that's the opportunity that I use my grow with my executive director to be able to say, okay, so I need your candor because I'm not sensitive. So euphemisms are completely lost on me. So if, I need feedback that I can internalize and that I can grow from. And we've really kind of established that good cadence where I can get that 360 feedback, so that way I'm looking at my leadership practice in a very comprehensive view, that it's not just about me to my staff, it's also how is my leadership appearing to my peers, and how am I leading with even my superiors, and all of those things. So it's just be very comprehensive in your perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who has asked wonderful questions. We've gotten a lot of questions pour in, so we're going to start diving into some of those questions that you're eager to hear about. And we have two members of our Employee Resource Group Planning Committee that are going to lead this portion, Liz Kendrick and Mackenzie Shepard. So we will be touching in on the questions that you've already asked anonymously, some of the things that we've had posted in the chat, but also feel free to raise your hand as well if there's a question you'd personally like to ask to the group. And then if we see any hands raised, we will go on ahead and give you the floor to speak and ask whatever question you have as well.
Good evening, everyone. So as Ali said, we've got some great questions in both the Q&A and in the chat. I will grab one from the Q&A to begin with. For those of you with children or desire to have children in the future, how do you balance leadership and motherhood?
I'm not sure. I've actually achieved that. So no, I don't know. It's hard. And I think we all know that, it is a constant juggle. But I think, somebody gave me some really good advice once and said, you know what, you need to plan your life and then try to fit your job into it. And that way you don't kind of neglect what your life means and your kids and that kind of thing. And so I've tried to do that. I can't say that I have achieved this great balance and that everything is in alignment. It is not. But I think it's knowing what your priorities are and trying to really stick with those. So I know my daughter and my family are a priority. And so there are some things in leadership position that I don't compromise. I don't do a lot of late evening things, and that doesn't change. I don't do things on the weekend. I try not to do that, and that doesn't change. There are always exceptions, but there has to be give and take so that I can give my family what they need as well as give my job what they need. So, and it's keeping that in perspective too. Like, do you really need to do this for your job? Do you really need to be at this meeting? Is this really that important? So it is a constant questioning, a constant revisiting, every day of, okay, how do I do this so that I can, balance it the best that I know how. So I don't have a total answer, but I think we're just doing the best I can.
Everyone will acknowledge it's hard. My kids are grown. Grownish. You can bring the perfectionism to both roles and sabotage yourself in both places. And so I think one of the things, even though it is very, very difficult and no one succeeds all the time, the working world needs more leaders who are also mothers. And so the temptation to say, well, I can't do both things perfectly, so I won't do them, is one I would encourage creative young women to challenge. And then I will tell you a very quick story. When my oldest son was, I think, first grade, and he fell and bloodied his leg on the playground, and the teacher, he couldn't walk, picked him up and ran into the nurse's office with this bleeding, screaming kid. And as she was running, she said, "Does your mother work?" And he said, "Not when this happens." So.
I think from my perspective, that's kind of where that emotional intelligence comes in, because I've been a single parent hero for most of my working career. And my baby just turned 18 2 weeks ago. So praise Jesus, they made it to adulthood. But the reality of it is you have to learn the barometer at work and your barometer of your family. And so it's a kind of a give and take, I've learned over the years when the boys are at a stress level, that I need to pull back from work and be more present with them. And then there's times that they're okay. And if I need to be more at work, then I can do so. But it's that balance. I think one of the benefits that COVID has given us that I kind of wish we would have figured out 5 years ago is this modified work from home thing. Because I think that's been pretty value added. Just last Monday when I stayed home and was doing my Zoom meetings, I looked over and, watching my kid do his online high school stuff and recognized that, maybe we have an opportunity to be a little more engaged in class. Had he been in school and I've been at work, I never would have had the opportunity to crack down on that. But, so I think that there's just some opportunities, but you have to use that emotional intelligence. You have to know your family, identify that line in the sand ahead of time and say, I'm not crossing it, or we're getting close to it. We need to step back.
And I think, again, my kids are grown, very grown. But I think, this day and time, it's probably even more challenging because we stay connected to work sometimes through Zoom and being able to work from home. But I think regardless of that, you have to have a time to shut it off and draw those lines to where in the day am I and where does my attention need to be? And listen, just listen to your family, because they're constantly telling you what they need. Maybe not in words, but sometimes in actions. But so listen, whether, that's, we need to do that anyway, right? So, but listen to your family, and your family will tell you, your kids will tell you, your husband, your spouse, your, significant other, you will begin to know when you're not meeting their need. I can remember my husband used to, I can remember I'd come home and I'd still be in this leadership role. And I can remember a couple times I, was kind of saying, like probably saying something a little like a leader at home. And he said, he had to say, well, wait a minute, you're not at the Detroit Medical Centers anymore. You're here. And here, you don't talk like that. Because so sometimes if you listen to them, they'll help you understand when, you might need to draw some better lines.
I think that's a good point, especially having that open communication with them when, and making it okay and safe for them to be able to communicate to you. Like if I put my kid on a performance improvement plan because he's not meeting my expectations around trash, then maybe I'm putting a little bit too much manager in the home environment, and need to peel that back a little bit. But on the other side, I think it's really important for the work-life balance piece. That is really important, because it's not only important for our own mental health as leaders, but as you start to climb that ladder, the way that you treat yourself sets the expectations of the way your subordinates think that they have to be. And here's a classic example of that. Sometimes I don't sleep very well. And so if I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I see an email come through, I might respond to it because, it's interrupting my Candy Crush time or whatever. And what I found is that when I am not unplugged and I don't have good balance, my direct reports think that they need to not have good balance. So suddenly their expectation of themselves becomes, my boss is here till 6. I need to be here till 6. I need to be here at 7. I need to be available on the weekends. And it just becomes this escalating thing. And so again, like that's where that emotional intelligence comes in, where I use that barometer with my family. I also use that with my direct reports and say, are they putting a little bit too much, or do I feel like they're crossing a line in their personal life? And what am I doing to contribute that? So then I intentionally leave, and sometimes it kills me, but I leave my laptop home through the week. Once I leave here at 5, 6, 7 o'clock, I don't take my laptop home and continue to work. I don't even think work until I come back in the morning. And part of that is because if I'm emailing at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, I don't want my managers thinking they've got to respond at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So you have to find that balance for them as well.
All great points. Thank you so much. We've had a few questions posted about people often saying women are too emotional for leadership or too emotional in the workplace. How do you navigate those situations?
Do you want me to start, since I'm definitely a heart on my sleeve kind of person? Just kidding. Anybody who knows me knows that that's not true. I think that, people, when they start saying there's too much emotion, I think that's just because they're not comfortable with the direction that leadership and culture in the workplace is going. And so some of that is their own saying, oh, we're being too emotional. I would disagree, because it's not just about emotion, it's really about candor, right? So like if we're going to have crucial conversations and we're going to be open and transparent with each other to get alignment, there has to be some level of emotional vulnerability that I have to be comfortable enough with you to be able to say, hey, we're going to work through this. And you know what, sometimes that stress level is at a point where I might tear up, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to get through it, because we just have to make sure that the focus stays on the outcome and it's not about the emotion. So as long as you're not using, I think emotion is very important. It shows the human side, and people, especially in healthcare, we are so stressed right now. We need to know that we're following humans and we're not robots, that we're not just here to get through the machine. So I think it's important to keep that emotional piece. You just have to recognize when when the emotions are managing you and you're not managing the emotions. So if it's at a point where it's a little out of control, that's fine. But I don't see any I think we need to be angry and upset about things once in a while, because that's how we get movement. When you are lacking emotion, you are complacent, and that is not going to take us forward in the next steps. I think it's just a matter of finding that balance. It is okay to cry. It is okay to be a human, because I will work beside a human every day.
And to be a leader, I think you really do have to spend some time in self-reflection. So it's not self-reflection as an effort to get rid of emotion, because we are human and emotions, but it is useful to spend some time getting to know yourself and why you feel certain emotions in certain contexts, and what makes you angry, what makes you sad. And then once you have some of that self-knowledge, you are in a better position to be able to recognize it, name it, and it's not so frightening, and it's not going to hijack you in the way that it might be.
Yeah, and I think sometimes addressing those emotions, I agree with what both of you said. It kind of helps move that obstacle out of the way. Like, okay, let's call it what this is. I'm upset, I'm mad, or whatever. Okay, let's deal with it. And then, okay, how do we move to the next step? So I think it really is about, calling it out, addressing it, but acting like it doesn't exist, then it's always that barrier to get through.
Thank you. Misty touched on this a little earlier, but I know a hot topic right now is the transition to remote work. So how has that transition to a remote workforce impacted you as a leader?
So I think from the clinical environment, it doesn't necessarily impact the staffing that I need, and obviously the patient touch, but what it does help is with the work-life balance, because now they don't have to come in for staff meetings or town halls. We can have those virtually. So I definitely applaud the development of our robustness of the virtual platform. I also think that it's value added as you start to climb up in leadership. In our last directors meeting, we talked about, it's okay for our managers if they want to pick a day that they work from home, that's okay. And if that helps them manage their home life and get a little bit of balance or feel connected to their family, I am okay with that. So I think it's been a tremendous benefit. And then, just from a system, space, facilities, capacity, and the more people who can work from home, and obviously it's better for the health system because there's less facilities and operational expense that goes along with that. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. It just can't believe it took us a pandemic to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. Most of my areas are areas that have, some of them have had already worked from home, had staff that worked from home. And so I think we have the luxury of having performance that can be measured very easily on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, how much cash is coming in, how much is going out, what are our denials. And so I think we had already kind of mastered measuring and tracking and monitoring and reporting, and having our staff. I think it's important so that everybody knows what the goal is and where we are and how we get there. So I think we just had already done that. And so we just built upon that. I think what was a little bit different was the management team. I think, with some seasoned leaders like myself, sometimes, it took a little bit to say, okay, so I'm not quite used to this type of role working from home, and how is that done? And I think that it really did challenge us to be able to understand that we don't manage people anyway, right? Like, I don't walk around and manage a person. I lead, I put things in place, I give direction, I establish targets and measurement standards, and then I really just manage those, right? So as long as I have a way to be able to share that information through communicating, having huddles in every morning so everybody understands where they are, I would say that I've been shocked by our performance, literally. I think people have worked harder. We've probably brought in more cash, in the last few months, given, with the pandemic and what other hospitals are doing. So it's been very, very successful. And I think I try to always communicate that to my leaders, just how successful it has been, how they've been.
Thank you. Can any of you suggest any good resources or information about developing emotional intelligence?
I think there's lots of different opportunities. If you're kind of like me, I have a short attention span, so the Google machine works really good to just pull up different blogs or things like that. If you're a podcaster, there's lots of really good podcasts out there. There's Human Brain is one that just really kind of goes into the psychology of all sorts of different things that is really cool. And then, of course, reality-based leadership with Cy Wakeman. I'm a huge fan of that. And she just kind of puts it out there, but there's a lot of really kind of no ego and collaborative leadership, which I think, is kind of what we're all, drinking the Kool-Aid here today. So I think that, it's just a matter of what works best for you. How do you consume it? If you're one of those people that like to have a book in your hand, then just, kind of look at different books and read it. Just reach out and start reading stuff. I mean, I think I'm a voracious reader. Learner is my top strength. And I think that's one of the things that has just helped me be successful, is because you never stop reading. In fact, I read an article that's, one of the things a lot of the smartest people, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, all of them spend a minimum of 5 hours a week doing something, just learning a task, whether it's reading or learning about something. And that's very important to the development of not only your brain, but also to, just expanding your horizons and your perceptions. And I think is just completely value added.
A couple people have mentioned mindfulness. I think there are a lot of mindfulness resources available, I think, on the MU campus. In terms of emotional intelligence, recognizing what you need to do for yourself so that you can come to work balanced and having taken care of your own emotions, I think goes a long way towards your own emotional intelligence towards others.
Yes, I'm a big fan of Cy Wakeman, so I love that you threw that in there. How do you go about investigating proposed leadership opportunities so that you know what is really involved?
I mean, I would, if you can, engage people who have similar leadership positions and really get to know, have multiple probably conversations about what it entails, but kind of go in with a lot of questions too, to be able to probe deeply. And so obviously it's going to have to be somebody who's willing to be transparent and open about it, but kind of know what you're looking for so that you can ask the right questions and appropriate. But I would say, if you can find somebody, even if it's not the identical leadership position, but something similar, just to really dive in and see. But I think it comes better if you talk to a person as opposed to like reading about a leadership position, even though that, it helps, but you need to know what it's like every day, in that position. So I would say talking is probably the best way.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, I know one of the things that I thought was very, very helpful when I was in the interviewing process for this role was I had the opportunity to actually meet with the individuals that I would be leading. And they told without really telling the story, they kind of told the story. And just by the questions that they asked, you could understand, even by their body language, just kind of where they were coming from. And I think it spoke to the culture and different things like that. And I think all of those things are very, very important. So it's not just getting the, from the direct report or whoever's interviewing you, but I thought that was a real blessing that I was able to meet with and speak to those individuals, because again, I think they shared more than the job description or anything, so.
And I think if you're looking internally too, don't hesitate to reach out to do a pretty good investigation before you kind of just apply and leap. Look at the job description, look at the area, maybe ask a few of your peers in that area, but don't hesitate to reach out to the hiring manager, and just say, hey, this is what I'm considering. What are you looking for in a candidate? Because even in that initial conversation, you can kind of get a feel for them and what they're looking for, and making sure it's going to be a good fit for you. Because there might be a red flag that pops up. So, like for me, if I was doing that same thing and I reached out to a hiring manager or director at that point, and just had a conversation of what they were looking for. And if they were very rigid in what they expected, I know that's not the job for me, and I'm not even going to waste my time or theirs applying. But on the other hand, if it's somebody who seems pretty excited and will tell me what you think and your vision, and then I know, okay, this might be an opportunity for me. If you're looking outside the system, which I don't necessarily advocate for, but sometimes growth opportunities take you that way. Again, I think it's look at your job description, read a lot and research the organization about their mission and their vision, and then do a little investigation. So look up the comments about them on Indeed. And, are they getting 3 or are they getting 5 stars? And, what are previous employees saying? Leverage, if you're on LinkedIn, use your network and reach out to people, start connecting with people who work there, and then just see what they're posting. So try to get a feel, because I think, again, it kind of goes back to that emotional intelligence, but that feel for culture fit, because for me, at least, that is very important, that I make sure that I get to the right culture and that I'm not setting myself up to work somewhere that I'm going to be absolutely miserable, because that won't last. So.
Great. I'm going to kind of combine 2 questions. What do you look for in a leader, and how do you either portray soft skills in an interview or observe those soft skills when you're interviewing someone, like emotional intelligence, et cetera?
Well, when I'm looking for a leader or somebody that I would work for or with, I definitely am looking for that ability to be vulnerable and to, be collaborative, not so protective of their ego, position, sense of rightness, that they can't listen and be open to new ideas. And so that's really, really important. And that, has really helped me. I've worked for people like that, and that has helped me cultivate those skills in myself. Seeing somebody that I considered tremendously accomplished and successful be willing to admit mistakes was incredibly transformative for me.
I think for me, if I have a position open, like if it's one of my direct reports or a manager position, when we have those initial conversations or we get to that interview, first of all, I never do a solo interview. Not necessarily, it's one-on-one with me, but like to Teresa's experience, we're going to do a series of panel interviews, because I want the entire team to be invested in this decision, because at the end of the day, it's not just me that has to live with it. It's the people who are reporting to this position. It's the people underneath those people. It's the doctors and the medical directors that we work with. So I want to have a robust kind of investment where we all think this is going to be a good fit. But in the interview, when I'm asking questions, I really want to see somebody who's kind of an innovative thinker, and kind of, somebody who doesn't need to be micromanaged. So, while that might work very well for other leaders, that's disaster in my service line, because, there's 2 things, like when, with great responsibility or with great power comes great responsibility. It means that I'm not going to micromanage your world, but I'm going to set those performance expectations, and I need you to meet those. So how you do that and go about it, I'm going to let you find your own way at the end of the day, as long as you're achieving what I need you to achieve. So I'm going to want to hear a lot of your thoughts and your vision. So some things that have been very successful for me when interviewing for positions, when I would kind of look at what the position is about, and then whether I was off base or not, I went in with a plan. So what I would say is, this is what I see what the vision of the organization is. I love this position. I think I could do this with this position. And at the end of the day, this is my proposal, and either you're going to like it or not, and that's okay. Because that's kind of, you have to look at a job interview. It's not just them interviewing you, it's you interviewing them. It's a relationship that goes both ways. So that's what I look for is, those people that can kind of develop that, show that initiative, but also show some insight in the way that they answer their questions. They don't ask the canned questions and be like, how would you deal with this situation? And what I'm looking for is, how would they treat their peers, or how would they treat their subordinates, or how would they mentor somebody through that? So it's kind of asking about where are they at with their mindfulness or their emotional intelligence, and then how are they going to apply that? So
Awesome. Thank you so much for our attendance, for everybody who showed up and participated and provided these fantastic questions. And then a huge thank you to our 4 fantastic panelists. We have phenomenal mentors here in MU Healthcare, and School of Medicine and School of Health Professions, and just all over our system with School of Nursing as well. And it's definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to work with individuals who are passionate about leadership development and who are willing to take the time to share their insights with everybody. So we will start wrapping things up. I appreciate everybody's time. If we didn't get to your question, know that we will, 1, this is being recorded, so we will send it out to everybody. And 2, it will be wonderful for the Women of MU Healthcare ERG to see these questions, even if they weren't answered. So we know these are things that you guys are interested in learning more about, and we can touch on future programs that we do and different events that we put on as well. I am going to ask for everybody's feedback. We are always looking for new ways to learn more information. So I am going to share with you a survey. It will be in the chat, and then you're also going to see a QR code pop up on your screen in just a moment as well. And we ask that you are able to go to this link. It's a really quick survey just so we can get some more information on exactly what you're interested in learning more about and how you feel like the event went. So thank you so much for taking the time to attend and also for filling out the survey as well. And we'll leave this up for just a couple of minutes and then we'll close it down. But like I said, this is being recorded, so you'll have the link sent to you as well.